Hi, good day everyone. I'm Simon Dawson, Senior Lecturer at Cardiff Met University. Welcome to my short interviews with industry specialists, where I ask how they got into their field of work, the essential skills that they use on a regular basis, and any advice they can give and offer to students during their studies and also when they get into the industry themselves. Today I'm joined by David Brown. David, welcome and thank you for talking to me.
Thank you, Helen. Hello, Simon. Yes, we're in the world of a bit of a lockdown at the moment. So I'm hoping this approach that you're taking is going to sort of help students in the future. I think it's vital that we help students. It's the most important thing I think that you can do for them right now. Well, initially, I like the idea of making jam from rejected strawberries. That's actually true. That's where I really wanted to start with the idea of going into the food and drinks industry. But it sort of led me wanting to go to make low-cost food, in actual fact, in some places like Africa, where people were starving. So I wanted to do something positive. So that's where I started. Then I had a reality check. And the reality check was you need a job and you need a career. Yeah? And that led me to wanting to do something that was vocational. So a vocational meaning to my life, which was food related.
Right.
And what came out of that was, therefore, I did my first degree with food science, but my first job, and don't laugh, was at R. White's Lemonade. Yeah, this was in a factory in Croydon. I'm not saying it was bad, but no, I'm not saying it was bad. Yeah, I was 22. Now, the important thing was, though, I had this grand title of chief chemist at 22. Yeah?
Wow.
Exactly. The title didn't really go with the job, but that didn't matter. The important thing was, and this is key, was getting that first job. And for me, getting that first job at 22 and with the word chief chemist and a manager was very, very important. After that, though, I sort of went to a large American company. Now that provided me with a huge amount of work to do on a global QAM, a quality management system, with lots of international suppliers. And so that opened my world to something much bigger than I'd been used to. It was great. After that, I went to a smaller company, but it was a bigger role. And the important thing for me was smaller company, bigger role, so more responsibility, and then going back to larger companies, albeit maybe a smaller cog, but you were constantly moving up. So for me, it's always been about greater responsibility and a more senior role. It's never to do with money. And I still maintain better job, more responsibility, the money will come, queued off will come. But I used to move about every 6 years. I found that not just because you might stagnate, but moving not too regularly, but about 5, 6 years was enough to help you focus on your next important move. You gain enough experience to move on.
So you're talking about moving in different companies or moving within the same company but a different role?
Sometimes, I mean, good point. In my early career, it was moving companies. Later on, it was moving within the same company, but to different roles. So I was moving from maybe a quality role to an environmental role, and then from there into something completely different. But my big break was about 10, 12 years having been in the industry, and I joined a company called Guinness UDV, now called Diageo. And I won't bore you with the history, but what I gained was huge amounts of international travel. Yeah, right. I've worked in virtually every country in the world. I've worked in Africa, where I wanted to be, Latin America, the Caribbean, America. The Seychelles was a bit nice. Okay, and Mauritius was a bit nicer too. But I ended up in Australia and India, and predominantly the Asia Pacific. And that taught me an awful lot. But what I did was, the biggest thing for me was I developed with a group of other people what was called the Global Risk Management Standards. No other food company or drinks company had done this in the world. Diageo was the first, and I was very proud of that. And it taught me, you know, an awful lot. Oh, at the same time, I became a fellow of the IFST. Something else that students maybe ought to think about in the future was getting their fellowship with the IFST.
So how do you get the fellowship then?
Well, you have to be nominated. You have to have had the experience. You've got to have the knowledge. You have to have spent sufficient time within the food and drinks industry, and you've got to be, well, you've got to be pretty good at what you're doing, to be honest. Yeah. But if you know somebody within the IFST who's a fellow and they know what you've done, they're the people to contact, and they will be the ones that could put you forward. Doesn't mean you'll automatically get fellowship, but it certainly helped me in my final part, because at 57, I'm retired now. At 57, I decided to set up my own consultancy, and I've run that for 10 years and enjoyed every moment of it, of sharing the knowledge, sharing the information that I gained, but also having the freedom to do what I wanted to do. Yeah? And having that fellowship, and therefore getting on to the IFSC consultancy list, was a way of getting an awful lot of work, I must admit. So that's been my career.
Wow, quite a big extent of career then, really, traveling all around the world and stuff, and
Wonderful.
the different types of jobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's probably going to be quite difficult, but what were some of the best things then that you have seen or accomplished then during your practice?
Well, I have to admit that one of the most amazing things that I had done was to travel the world. But in traveling the world, what I've done is meet some amazing people, some amazing cultures and different nationalities. Mm-hmm. And that gave me an awful lot more than anything else has. It's helped round my view on how the world should be looked at from a view of looking after people and foods, and the way people need nutrition and need food around the world. But I did develop some pretty amazing systems, from BCP, business continuity planning, through to these global risk management standards, risk and change management. Those are the big things that I've learned. Okay, not food directly, but without the food and drinks industry, I couldn't have done that. The other thing that I'm very proud of, and the things that I'd enjoy, was successfully running my own consultancy. And having 3 amazing career goals. And ending up with 4 properties. Now, I'm only saying that because if you work hard and you do get through and develop your career, yeah, you can make some money in the food and drinks industry, and we all need that. Mm-hmm. The last thing, funny is actually sort of say that, because only 2 weeks ago, an Indian guy, a guy who I worked for, phoned me up, and this is after 10 years, and he said, "I'm phoning you. I've just found you through the IFST, and I'm just phoning you because when you came to see me, I was producing 5,000 bottles a week." And I said, "Yeah, well, good. So, it was a difficult time." He said, "You were very, very hard, Mr. David, very hard man indeed. But now I'm doing 5 million bottles a month." Get that picture? And he said, "Without you, what you taught me and how you drove me to make things better, I wouldn't be where I am." So, and he just phoned me up a couple of weeks ago.
Wow. What kind of bottled products was he doing?
Whiskey. Indian whiskey. But the point was that he'd listened. He wanted to improve. He wanted to make the quality improvements. He wanted to make the changes in the environment. the changes with health and safety, the changes in managing problems and risks, and the training of his people, and bringing in young, good, capable, scientific food scientists and similar. That's changed his world. Wow. And made him very, very rich, as well as, you know, doing very well in his industry.
It sounds like it as well. So in all of these roles that you've done, you know, when you were working for businesses and as a consultant as well, what kind of essential skills then were you using on a regular basis that helped with these positions?
Well, there's probably two key areas, Simon, that I think are really are more important than anything else. Well, understanding the real needs of safe, wholesome and nutritional food is nutritious food is vital. If you don't understand those, then you won't be able to help anybody. Yeah, and that means safe, wholesome, nutritious food every day, everywhere, and for every person. The second thing would be understanding the other people's points of view. Now, I know you might say, well, this is not exactly food science related. No, it's not. But I learned that to understand what people want, to listen to people, to understand their points of view when you're trying to sort of resolve problems was essential, because if you didn't do that, there was no way you could actually make the changes that were needed. Yeah. The third thing, and I suppose there's probably one or two other things, but the third thing is I've always stuck to my principles as a food export, food export. I've been a food export, yeah, as a food expert in every field that I've worked in. So it's maintaining the principles of those key things I've just mentioned: safe food, nutritious food, and wholesome food. The last one, I think, is working with people to help make a difference and to change or improve their systems for the better. Because if you don't actually make a difference, then what are you doing? So those would be my key things.
Oh, all good, all very, very relevant as well. So going back in your career and stuff, is there anything that you could think of that a student could do, like extracurricular activities that might help them within their roles when they start getting their first jobs? Well,
yes, I can. And by the way, those skills I've just talked to you about, and they haven't changed no matter which job I've done. Yeah, I think they've been the key to my success in making sure that I stuck to those no matter which job, no matter which country, no matter which industry within the food and beverage world I was working in. Extra activities for students. Yeah, I mean, apart from the obvious ones. Yeah, I would probably give you four things. I like working in few numbers. Yeah, one would be always do more than you're asked to do, and do it willingly. The second thing would be always be the first to volunteer, to take on something new, no matter how difficult it might seem and how impossible it might appear. Yeah, put your hand up, say you'll do it. That will widen and broaden your knowledge and experience. The third thing is don't be scared of failure. That's fine to fail. However, the caveat is don't do it again. Right? And then the last thing would be, in this day and age, and particularly now where we are with this pandemic, in this day and age, I think students, you need to be as flexible and as broad as you possibly can be with the knowledge that you have. Now, I know that's difficult because you're young, but that's a positive. You can be flexible. You're going to have to be flexible, and you're going to have to be as broad as you can.
Wow, so there's some great things to think of. What about things like courses or anything like that? Can you think of any additional courses or anything that a student could do that might help them along the way as well?
I think the courses is as much up to the universities. that are trying to teach them as much as you possibly can, which is really difficult because what you teach them isn't necessarily as much as they're going to have to be focused on when they do get into industry. Yes. So broaden yourselves as much as you can. Go and do things about, like this pandemic. Understand things like the risks that there will be in the food industry. Look what's just happened in Anglesey, yes, with the new cases in Anglesey. People didn't understand the risks. So you might not get a course at your university to do with managing risks. Go and do a course on those sorts of subjects. So broaden yourselves as much as possible.
Fantastic. So as a final point, is there any additional tips or advice you can give any students? You know,
well, when you're going for a job, I think this is probably the key thing is that you've got your degree. Now what do you do? You've got to get a job. And I would say before you even start to look for a job, just go and do this. Go and write down 4 lists. And the 4 lists are made up into 2 parts. Yeah? And write down the things you like doing and the things you're good at. And the other list is to write down the things you don't like doing and you're not good at. Now, the thing is, you can lie about all those 4 things. It's your list, so it's up to you. But I would say once you've written that, you'll know what you like doing and you know what you're good at. Why don't you want to go and get a job that you like doing and the things that you're good at? But if you don't understand what those are, how can you go and look for that job? So do those lists. And once you've done that, well, then I would do this when you're starting to develop your CV. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Don't ever lie on your CV. You get found out. Don't be smarter. Don't be clever. Yeah? Keep it short. Oh, and finally, write down things that you're proud that you've done. Be proud of your achievements, because that's what industry wants. People who will achieve. Simple, isn't it?
Sounds simple. It's easier when we're just talking about it. I think it's more difficult when you're a student and you have all of these different senses that are going on around you, and it's trying to filter all of these things and think, well, what is the most important to do?
Yeah.
So, and what's going to give me a return of investment as well?
Yeah. Hard. It is hard, and I think the students of today will probably find it harder than I did, Simon, when I first started in the 70s. Getting a job was an expectation. Mm-hmm. And I can't apologize for that. It just was. So we expected to get jobs. Having said that, we didn't expect to earn very much. I remember my first job, my expectation was I'd earn £3,500 a year. And I thought, that'd be pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. The fact that I was earning 7,500 within the first month made me think I'm going to be rich. Yeah. How things change. But having said that, it is a good industry to work for. But it doesn't mean you have to stay in and do the boring parts, what I call the boring parts of the food and drinks industry. So many people I know stayed in the labs doing lab work. I didn't want to do that. Yeah. And I'm not saying that others shouldn't. I'm just saying I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go out and help make things different and make the change. That made my career what it was. Brilliant.
And got you around the world as well.
Got me around the world, absolutely. And that was probably one of the best things. Got me around the world. Helped me understand too the difficulties and the problems that the rest of the world has in making food. And that sounds bizarre, but it is one of the most complicated things, is making food when you don't have the resources that we have in Europe. We're very lucky to have the money, the resources, the education and the focus. Seeing how people do this in other parts of the world was very distressing and made me even more determined to make a difference.
Fantastic. Well, David, it's been great talking to you today. I think you've offered some fantastic advice. So thank you, take care, and I'll see you at the next IFST meeting.
Indeed you will. Take care. Thank you, Simon. Well
Thank you.
done, students.